At 91 years old, I have learned that the most frightening thing about growing old is not the wrinkles. It is not the aching knees. It is not even the possibility of falling. The most frightening thing is waking up one morning and realizing that everyone around you has quietly started making decisions for you. Where you should live, what you should eat, when you should rest, who should visit you, and eventually whether you are still capable of deciding anything at all. My name is Eleanor Grace Whitmore, and I am 91 years old. For most of my life, I thought independence meant being able to do everything myself. I was wrong. I discovered that independence means something much deeper. It means waking up and knowing that your life still belongs to you. And I almost lost that. Every morning before I open my eyes, I count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I open my eyes, look toward the ceiling above my bed and whisper, "I'm still here." It sounds simple, almost foolish, but there was a time when I wasn't sure I wanted to open my eyes at all. That was after my husband Thomas died. Thomas and I were married for 64 years. 64. You don't stay married to someone that long without becoming tangled together in ways that are impossible to explain. His coffee cup was on the counter every morning, his shoes were beside the door, his reading glasses were always disappearing, and for decades I knew what his footsteps sounded like before I even heard the door open. Then one morning there were no footsteps, no voice, no coffee brewing, just silence. The kind of silence that makes an entire house feel too large. For weeks after Thomas died, I moved through our home like a visitor. I cooked because cooking was something my hands remembered. I folded clothes that no one would wear. I opened drawers just to see his things. Sometimes I would stand in the hallway and almost call his name. Then I would remember. He was gone. And I was still here. At first, that felt like punishment. Later, I realized it could become a choice. I just didn't know how yet. And that is where my story really begins. Because losing Thomas wasn't the only thing I had to survive. I also had to survive what happened when the people who loved me became afraid of losing me too. My daughter, Rachel, is a good woman. I need to say that before I tell you what happened, because sometimes the people who hurt us are not trying to hurt us. Sometimes they love us so much that their fear becomes another kind of cage. Rachel has 2 children, a demanding job, and a husband named Michael, who thinks every household problem can be solved with a toolbox. She is busy, she is kind, she is responsible, and after Thomas died, she became frightened. At first, it was little things. "Mom, did you eat? Mom, did you take your medication? Mom, are you sure you should be driving? Mom, maybe you shouldn't climb that ladder." Then the calls became daily, then twice a day, then sometimes 3 times. I understood, I really did. But there is something strange about being 91 and suddenly having your daughter speak to you as though you are a child. One morning Rachel said, "Mom, what if something happens and nobody is there?" I laughed. "What do you think has been happening to me for the last 90 years? She didn't laugh. That was when I realized how serious she was. A few weeks later, she came to my house with a folder. I knew immediately that I was in trouble. She sat across from me at the kitchen table. "We've been talking," she said. Whenever your children say, "We've been talking," you know the conversation is no longer entirely yours. She suggested I move into her home, just temporarily. The guest room was ready. The grandchildren would love it. She would feel better. Everyone would feel better. And there it was, that phrase. Everyone would feel better. Everyone except perhaps me. I looked around my kitchen, the old wooden table, the blue mug Thomas bought me on our 10th anniversary, the photographs on the refrigerator, the small garden outside the window. My life was everywhere. I wasn't afraid of living with Rachel. I was afraid of disappearing inside her life. Still, I agreed, because sometimes love makes you say yes before you have learned how to say no. I packed one suitcase, and I left my home for 6 weeks. Rachel's house was beautiful. Her children were excited to have Grandma there. My son-in-law Michael built a small shelf beside my bed. My grandson Noah brought me his drawings. Everyone was kind. That was the problem. If they had been cruel, I could have fought back. But kindness is harder to resist. Kindness makes you feel guilty for wanting something different. Their life had a rhythm. Breakfast at 7, school at 8, work, dinner at 6, television after dinner, bed when the house became quiet. I slowly adjusted, or at least I tried. But one morning I stood in the kitchen while everyone else rushed around me. Rachel was packing lunches. Noah was looking for his shoes. Michael was checking his phone. Someone was shouting from upstairs, and I suddenly realized something. Nobody needed me to do anything. Nobody needed me to prepare breakfast. Nobody needed me to decide what was for dinner. Nobody needed me to remind the children where their gloves were. For 64 years, I had been part of a household. Now I was a person sitting inside someone else's household. One evening, Rachel and the children left for a school concert. She paused at the door. "Mom, are you okay staying here alone?" "Yes," I said. She pointed toward the refrigerator. "There's dinner in there." After they left, I sat at the kitchen table. I opened the refrigerator. There was a container of soup, and I started crying. Not because I was hungry, because suddenly I remembered how many times I had said those same words. "There's soup in the refrigerator." I had spent my life being the person who made sure everyone else was taken care of. Now I was the person being told where the soup was. That night, I understood something I had never been willing to admit. Being surrounded by people is not the same as belonging, and being cared for is not the same as being needed. I eventually went home. Rachel worried. I told her I was fine. She suggested hiring someone to help me a few hours a day. Her name was Patricia. Patricia was professional, organized, and perfectly pleasant. She meant well. She also rearranged my entire kitchen within 3 days. My cups went somewhere else. My pans went somewhere else. My tea disappeared into a cabinet I had never opened. She told me she was making everything more efficient. Perhaps she was. But I had lived in that kitchen for 43 years. I didn't need efficiency. I needed familiarity. My hands knew where everything belonged. After Patricia rearranged things, I would stand in my kitchen and open the wrong drawer, then another, then another. I felt ridiculous and embarrassed. But the worst part wasn't the kitchen. It was being watched. Every time I stood up, Patricia watched. Every time I walked outside, she watched. Every time I reached for something on a high shelf, she said, "Let me do that." At first, I appreciated it. Eventually, I started moving more slowly, not because I needed to, because I wanted to prove I could. That is a dangerous thing. When someone repeatedly treats you as fragile, you can begin to organize your entire life around proving that you are not. Patricia was there 4 hours a day, but those 4 hours changed the other 20. I became aware of myself. Was I walking correctly? Was I sitting too quickly? Was I doing something that looked unsafe? I had spent 90 years learning how to trust my own body. Now I was beginning to doubt it. And then I looked at the bills. That was when I made my decision. I could not afford to spend my remaining years proving that I was still capable. I needed to start living instead. So I let Patricia go. Rachel was disappointed, but this time I didn't apologize. That was the first small victory. A few weeks later, Rachel took me to see a senior living community. It was lovely. I want to be fair. The gardens were beautiful. The dining room had white tablecloths. There were activities, exercise classes, movie nights, people my age sitting together and laughing. A woman showed us an apartment. "This would be perfect for you," she said. She explained the schedule. Breakfast at 8, lunch at noon, activities at 2, quiet hours after 10. I listened. Then I asked, "What if I don't want to go to the activity?" She smiled. "You don't have to." "What if I want to eat dinner at 5? We have set dining hours." What if I want to stay awake until midnight? She hesitated, then smiled again. I looked at Rachel. She was hopeful. She wanted me safe. She wanted me close. She wanted me protected from the world. And suddenly I understood something that frightened me. Everyone was trying to protect me from dying, but nobody was asking me how I wanted to live. That evening, I sat alone in my bedroom. Thomas's photograph was on the dresser. I picked it up. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do now," I whispered. And for the first time in my life, I admitted the truth. I felt useless, not unloved, not abandoned. Useless. There is a difference. You can be deeply loved and still feel as though you have nothing left to contribute, and that feeling can hollow a person out. I thought my life had become a list of things other people needed to do for me. Until one rainy afternoon, I heard someone crying through the wall. Her name was Lena. She was 34 years old. She lived next door with her 5-year-old son, Evan. I had seen them before. Lena was always rushing. Car keys in one hand, phone in the other. Child pulling at her coat. She looked like a woman carrying 10 invisible bags. That afternoon, I heard crying. Not loud crying. Quiet crying. The kind a person makes when she is desperately trying not to make any sound at all. I sat in my chair and listened. I told myself not to interfere. People deserve privacy. But the crying continued. Then I heard Evan calling for his mother. Something inside me changed. I stood up. It took me longer than it once would have. I put on my shoes. I walked next door. And I knocked. Lena opened the door. Her eyes were red. She immediately straightened her shoulders. "I wasn't crying," she said. "I didn't ask," I replied. For the first time she smiled. Just a little. Then Evan appeared. "Do you have food?" I looked at him. "Yes." "What kind?" "Soup." His eyes widened. "What kind?" "Chicken." "Can I have some?" I looked at Lena. She looked exhausted. So I said, "Both of you, come over." I had no plan, no strategy, no great philosophy. I simply made soup. That evening, Evan ate 2 bowls. Then he asked me about the little wooden box on my shelf. I told him about Thomas. I told him about the places we had traveled. I told him about the blue mug. He listened, really listened. And for the first time in months, someone wasn't watching me to see if I was okay. Someone was listening because he wanted to hear what I had to say. I went to bed that night feeling different, not younger, not stronger, just needed. The next morning, Lena came to my door. "I have a question," she said. "Go ahead." "Would you ever be willing to watch Evan for a couple of hours?" I almost laughed. Here I was, 91 years old, being asked to babysit. I suppose I could. Her eyes filled with relief. She started bringing Evan over on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. We ate breakfast. We watered my tomatoes. We walked around the garden. Sometimes he asked questions that made absolutely no sense. Sometimes he talked for 20 minutes without taking a breath. Sometimes he fell asleep on my sofa, and I loved every minute. Something strange happened. Lena began checking on me, not because Rachel told her to, not because I asked. She would knock in the evening. "Do you need anything from the store?" Sometimes she changed a light bulb. Sometimes she brought bread. One Saturday, another neighbor named Samuel came over. He had heard about my broken back step. "I can fix that," he said. "You don't have to." "I know." 20 minutes later, it was fixed. He refused payment. I thanked him. He looked embarrassed. I laughed. And suddenly my neighborhood felt different. I had spent months thinking I was alone. But perhaps I wasn't alone. Perhaps I had simply forgotten how to participate. That was the lesson. I didn't need someone to take care of me every hour of the day. I needed relationships. I needed people. I needed reasons to get out of bed. I needed something to give. And giving something to another person gave something back to me. Not money, not youth, not health. Something better. Purpose. After Lena and Evan entered my life, I began noticing things differently. The world had not become smaller. I had. I had been looking inward at everything I had lost. Thomas, my old routines, my strength, my independence, my role in the family. I had been measuring my life by what I could no longer do, but Evan taught me to measure it by what I could still do. I could still make soup. I could still tell stories. I could still listen. I could still teach someone how to grow tomatoes. I could still remember the names of birds. I could still make a frightened child laugh. I could still make a tired mother sit down for 20 minutes. I could still be a neighbor. I could still be a friend. And that changed everything. One afternoon, I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. I expected to see an old woman. Instead, I saw a person. An old person, yes, but still a person. Still curious, still stubborn, still capable of loving, still capable of being useful. I had spent too much time asking, who will take care of me? The better question was, who can I still care about? That question gave me my life back, not all of it. Thomas was still gone. My body was still aging. There were still things I couldn't do, but I had stopped confusing limitation with uselessness. Those are not the same thing. Growing older changes what you can contribute. It does not erase your ability to contribute. People sometimes ask me when everything changed. I could tell them it was when I met Lena, or Evan, or when I stopped the caregiver from taking over my kitchen. But the truth is, the deepest change came from something much smaller. 5 seconds. It began after Thomas died. One morning I woke up and didn't want to get out of bed. The room felt empty. The house felt enormous. I closed my eyes again. Then I thought, what if I just count? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At 5, I opened my eyes. I looked at the ceiling, and I said, I'm still here. I didn't feel better, not immediately. Thomas was still gone. The house was still quiet, my body still hurt. But something had happened. I had made a decision, a tiny one. I had chosen to begin. The next morning, I did it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm still here. Then again and again. Years passed. The habit remained. People sometimes search for complicated answers to aging. They want a miracle, a special diet, a secret exercise, a supplement, a magical morning routine. But sometimes the most important thing is simply recognizing that you woke up, that you are present, that the day has not happened yet, that you still have a say in how you enter it. Those 5 seconds don't cure loneliness. They don't bring dead people back. They don't make aging disappear. They do something quieter. They remind me, this day belongs to me too. I began making small decisions, not dramatic ones, small ones. I decided what time I wanted breakfast. I decided which days I wanted visitors. I decided when I wanted to watch television. I decided which flowers to plant. I decided when to say yes. And perhaps most importantly, I learned to say no. No, Rachel, I don't want to move yet. No, I don't need someone here today. No, I don't want to go to that activity. And sometimes, yes. Yes, I would love your help. Yes, come over for dinner. Yes, I would like you to stay. There is freedom in both words. Yes, no, age doesn't mean you have to surrender them. Rachel eventually understood. One evening, she sat beside me on the porch. Mom, she said, I think I was so afraid of losing you that I forgot to let you live. I looked at her. You were trying to love me. I know. I was trying to protect you from loving me too much. She laughed. Then we both cried. That was the night our relationship changed. Rachel stopped seeing me as someone who needed to be managed, and I stopped seeing her concern as an attempt to control me. We were mother and daughter again, 2 adults, 2 people trying to love each other without turning love into fear. That is something I wish more families understood. You cannot protect someone from aging. You cannot protect someone from every fall. You cannot protect someone from death. But you can help them live with dignity while they are still here. I am 91. I don't pretend that everything is easy. My knees complain. My balance isn't what it used to be. I get tired. Sometimes I forget why I walked into a room. Sometimes I miss Thomas so suddenly that it feels like someone opened a door inside my chest. But I am not finished. That is the part I wish people understood. Old age is not a closing door. It is another room. Different furniture, different light, different rules. But there is still a window. There is still something outside. I still have mornings. I still have tomatoes. I still have Lena. I still have Evan, who now insists he is too old to be called a little boy. He is 10 now. He still eats my soup. He still argues about everything. And he still asks me questions. Last year, he asked, "Eleanor, what happens when you get really old?" I smiled. "You become very good at knowing what matters." "What matters?" I pointed toward the garden. "People." He thought about that. Then he nodded. I don't know if he understood. Maybe he will someday. But I do. I spent decades believing that a meaningful life was built from big things. A good marriage, a family, a career, a house, money saved, problems solved. But at 91, I know better. A meaningful life is often built from tiny things. A bowl of soup, a conversation, a hand held, a tomato plant watered, a child laughing, a neighbor knocking on your door, a granddaughter asking you a question, 5 seconds before opening your eyes. These things look small until they are all you have. Then you realize they were never small at all. My granddaughter Sophie asked me recently, "Grandma, what is your secret?" Secret to what? To staying alive this long. I laughed. "I don't think I'm doing anything particularly impressive." She shook her head. "No. I mean, how are you still you?" That question stayed with me. How am I still me? I thought about Thomas. I thought about the empty years after he died. I thought about Rachel worrying, the guest room, the caregiver, the senior community, the feeling of becoming useless, the day I heard Lena crying, the first bowl of soup I gave Evan, the tomatoes, the neighbors, the 5 seconds. And then I knew the answer. I am still me because I stopped waiting for someone else to decide whether my life was valuable. I stopped measuring myself by what I had lost. I stopped thinking that needing help meant I had nothing left to give. I learned that independence isn't refusing help. It is choosing what help means. It is saying, "Help me where I need help, but don't take my life away from me." I learned that being old doesn't mean becoming invisible. It means becoming someone who has survived enough to know what deserves attention. I learned that loneliness can be interrupted by something as simple as a bowl of soup. I learned that purpose doesn't retire when you do, and I learned that every morning is an invitation, not a guarantee, an invitation. So tomorrow morning, I will close my eyes, and before I open them, I will count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I will look at the ceiling. I will see the morning light. I will think about Thomas. I will think about Rachel. I will think about Evan. I will think about all the people I have loved, and all the people who somehow found their way into my life after I thought my life was already shrinking. And I will say the same thing I have said for years. I'm still here. Not angrily, not defiantly, not because I am afraid of death. I say it because I have finally learned the difference between being alive and merely existing. At 91, I'm not waiting for my life to end. I'm living the part I have been given. Maybe my steps are slower. Maybe my hands aren't as steady. Maybe I need help opening certain jars. Maybe I need to sit down more often. That's all right. I don't need to be the woman I was at 30. I don't need to be the woman I was at 60. I only need to be the woman I am today. And today, I am Eleanor. I am 91. I am still curious. I am still stubborn. I am still capable of loving. I am still capable of helping. I am still capable of saying no. I am still capable of saying yes. I am still capable of making soup. And I am still capable of waking up tomorrow morning and deciding what happens next. So if you are listening to me, and you're older too, I want you to remember something. Do not let anyone convince you that your life is already over simply because your life looks different now. You may need help. Accept it. You may move slower. That's okay. You may have lost people you thought you couldn't live without. I know. You may wake up some mornings wondering what your purpose is. I've been there. But listen to me. You are not finished. There is still someone you can call, someone you can listen to, someone you can help, something you can plant, something you can learn, something you can forgive, something you can laugh about, something you can give. And if all you can do tomorrow morning is open your eyes, then open them. Count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Look toward the light. Take one breath and tell yourself the truth. Not the truth other people want you to believe. Your truth. The truth that says, I am here. I still matter. I still have something to give. My story is not finished. And then, when the morning begins, live it. At 91, I have finally learned something I wish I had known at 41. You don't stay alive by holding on to the life you used to have. You stay alive by finding reasons to participate in the life you have now. Thomas taught me how to love. Losing him taught me how to survive. Rachel taught me that love can sometimes become fear. Lena taught me that people need people. Evan taught me that purpose can arrive through the smallest door. And those 5 seconds every morning taught me the most important lesson of all. I don't have to know what tomorrow will bring. I only have to be here when it arrives. So tonight, I will turn off the light. I will put my glasses beside the bed. I will listen to the house settle into silence. And tomorrow morning, I will count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I will open my eyes. And I will look at the ceiling. And I will smile. Because after 91 years, after love and loss, after fear and loneliness, after believing for a while that I had become unnecessary, I know something now. Something simple. Something true. Something nobody can take away from me. I am still here. And as long as I am here, my story is not over.